This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Thursday, March 24th, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
Republicans continue their efforts to impeach President Biden.
Joe Biden is the family's closer.
I'm Linda Kenyon in Washington.
A legal setback for Texas regarding its new immigration law, but the governor says he's not deterred. I'm Clayton Neville.
New York state lawyers respond to Donald Trump's claims he can't pay a $454 million bond against him. I'm John Stolnis.
Georgia conducts an execution for the first time in 4 years. We'll have details.
Fed says it still thinks 3 interest rate cuts are coming. I'm Jessica Ettinger. Police in Boise, Idaho say 3 corrections officers were shot as a suspect staged a brazen attack. I'm Julie Walker.
These are definitely not your little rascals, bank robbers who can barely shave. All ahead on America in the Morning. A House committee continues its efforts to impeach President Biden. Linda Kenyon has the story from Washington.
It was a hearing of the House Oversight Committee entitled Influence Peddling, examining Joe Biden's abuse of public office. But the real abuse of office, according to Democrats, was on the part of Republicans leading the impeachment efforts in the first place.
With any luck, today marks the end of perhaps the most spectacular failure in the history of congressional investigations.
Ranking Democrat Jamie Raskin. Chairman James Comer defended the investigation into Hunter Biden's questionable business dealings, alleging Joe Biden, who was then vice president, was involved.
Joe Biden is the family's closer.
To prove their point, Republicans called 2 witnesses who allegedly did business with Hunter Biden. One was Jason Galanis, who testified via video from prison, where he's serving time on fraud charges. The other, Tony Bobulinski, who said he briefly worked with Hunter Biden on a Chinese business deal that never materialized. Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez pressed Bobulinski.
Did you witness the president commit a crime? Is it your testimony today?
Yes.
And what crime have you witnessed?
How much time do I have to go through it?
It is simple. You name the crime.
Democrats brought Lev Parnas as their witness, the former operative for Rudy Giuliani, who just got out of prison in September, served time for fraud and campaign finance crimes. He criticized his former boss, Trump officials, and former Attorney General Bill Barr.
The impeachment proceedings that bring us here now are predicated on false information spread by the Kremlin. Everyone involved knew they were sharing lies.
Absent was Hunter Biden, who said he would testify in a public hearing. His attorney says GOP leaders provided no prior outreach when setting the hearing date and staged it the day before he was due in court in California. Representative Raskin said the investigation should be closed because the key GOP witness, Alexander Smirnov, made up the allegation that was key to the impeachment case.
And now sits in jail in California as a flight risk while the world studies his long-standing and extensive ties to Russian intelligence.
Leaving Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to say, at this point, the story isn't the fact that the basis of this impeachment inquiry is wrong. The story is why it is proceeding anyway. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
It didn't take long for a federal appeals court to rule on a controversial immigration law in Texas after the U.S. Supreme Court decided not to extend a block on the law. Correspondent Clayton Neville has reaction from politicians and police.
SB-4 lets Texas law enforcement arrest anyone suspected of being in the country illegally. Critics believe it'll lead to racial profiling, and the Biden administration argues that immigration is a federal issue and is not up to the states. The case has been tied up in the courts, and this week the U.S. Supreme Court voted 6-3 to allow the law to move forward, essentially sending the case back to the lower courts for more consideration.
But, like watching a tennis match, the ball goes back and forth across the net constantly. Later on, the Fifth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals said not so fast. The Federal Court of Appeals put a stay on it, but they have kept the stay in place.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott said the ruling won't stop his state from taking a surge of migration into its own hands.
But even without SB-4, Texas has the legal authority to arrest people coming across the razor wire barriers on our border, and we will continue to use our arrest authority and arrest people coming across the border illegally.
The back and forth legal battle is bringing reaction from police departments across the country. Neil Noakes is the police chief in Fort Worth.
Although we will always follow the law, the primary responsibility for immigration enforcement and border protection should be left to our federal and state partners. Our department remains unwavering in its commitment to community policing and making Fort Worth the safest city in the country for all who call this community home.
The Texas Department of Public Safety has arrested 40,000 people who've entered the country illegally, according to Governor Abbott, who insists the state will continue to deter illegal immigration. The state attorney general's office, meanwhile, says it's committed to the legal fight. I'm Clayton Neville.
When we return on America in the Morning, Trump's lawyer says he can't fork over the cash after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. There's more snow in the forecast for some northern tier states. With today's outlook, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
As we continue through the month of March, Mother Nature likes to remind us that March can still be a month of snow. That is certainly the case across the northern plains today and tonight. A storm commonly known as an Alberta Clipper will glide quickly eastward through the northern plains today and then continue into the Great Lakes tonight into tomorrow. Snow along the path of this area of low pressure will spread from northeast Montana into North Dakota and then northern South Dakota before moving into southern Minnesota late today, then quickly reach most of Michigan by tomorrow morning. Snow will range generally 1 to 3 inches in most places, but a heavier stripe of snow of 3 inches or more will fall in parts of North Dakota into Michigan, and 6 inches or more will be possible in parts of southern Wisconsin. Meanwhile, another storm will be shifting eastward through the southern plains, parallel to the northern storm. This feature will blossom a few showers and thunderstorms first thing this morning through portions of central Texas and then continue to build in strength and coverage through the midday into this afternoon. A few of the showers this morning and midday could be strong to severe, containing heavy rain, gusty winds, and even some hail. These two systems will eventually meet up this weekend for a monster storm in the east with heavier rain for many areas and snow in parts of New England. A third storm that brought colder air to the middle Atlantic and northeast will provide some snow for portions of northern New England, where a few inches can still fall today, and there will even be a few lake-effect snow showers through portions of Michigan and New York this morning. That's the weather across America. In Little Rock, Arkansas, it'll be a fairly cloudy day with a couple of showers and a high of 68. It'll be a windy and chilly day in Hartford, Connecticut, despite plenty of sunshine with a high of 41. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember, you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. As former President Donald Trump struggles to come up with a $454 million bond payment penalty following his fraud conviction in New York last month, the state refutes his lawyer's claims it is impossible to pay. Our John Stolnis is in Washington and files this report.
In a series of legal papers sent to an appeals court where Trump is trying to get the bond reduced or delayed until after the appeals process is over, Dennis Phan, a lawyer for the state's attorney general's office, disputes the claims of Trump lawyers that it is impossible for him to find the money. Phan says they haven't explored every option and that they, quote, failed to propose a serious alternative to fully secure the judgment. In an interview on WABC's Sid and Friends radio show yesterday, Trump claims it's unfair he may be forced to conduct a fire sale of his properties in order to meet the Monday deadline.
They don't even give you a chance to appeal. They want you to put up money before the appeal. So if you sell a property or do something and then you win the appeal, you don't have the property. What was that all about?
Phan says Trump can divide the total among multiple bonds from different underwriters rather than trying to find one to pay the whole thing at once, and that he could let a court hold some of his real estate while he appeals. In an interview on Fox News yesterday, Trump attorney Alina Habba was asked if he's looking outside the country for assistance.
Is there any effort on the part of your team to secure this money through another country, Saudi Arabia or Russia, as Joy Behar seems to think?
Well, there's rules and regulations that are public. I can't speak about strategy.
I'm John Stolnis.
With his final appeal denied by the U.S. Supreme Court, Georgia carried out the execution of Willie James Pye Wednesday night. The 59-year-old found guilty of murdering his former girlfriend over 3 decades ago. The execution conducted by lethal injection using phenobarbital. Numerous appeals were made citing his mental condition. This was Georgia's first execution of an inmate in 4 years. A couple items you'll hear next. Record pace on Wall Street, consumer debt increase. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. According to Bloomberg, the Justice Department is poised to sue Apple as early as today, accusing the world's second most valuable tech company of violating antitrust laws by blocking rivals from accessing hardware and software features of its iPhone. And in stocks, it's not just the tech sector doing well. CNBC's Jessica Ettinger has Thursday business.
Wall Street opens this morning at fresh record highs for all 3 major averages after the Fed decided to stick with a forecast of 3 interest rate cuts coming at some point this year. Fed Chair Jay Powell explained how hard it will be, though, to thread the needle between inflation soaring again and trying to keep the economy out of a job-crushing recession.
The risks are really two-sided here. We're in a situation where, if we ease too much or too soon, we could see inflation come back. And if we ease too late, we could do unnecessary harm to employment and, people's working lives. And so we want to be careful. And fortunately, with the economy growing, with the labor market strong, and with inflation coming down, we can approach that question carefully and let the data speak on that.
Fed Chair Jay Powell at the post-meeting news conference yesterday. Meantime, record high for the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500 index. That S&P closed at its 19th record high this year.
That's basically at a record pace of all-time highs. The most record highs the S&P has done in a calendar year, somewhere around 72. We got 18 in about a quarter. That basically annualizes to just about the best ever.
CNBC's Mike Santoli. Amazon being investigated by the FCC for selling outlawed products like banned signal jammers, which can be used to block Wi-Fi networks and disable security cameras. Amazon says it monitors what's for sale on its site, but NBC News found 9 product listings.
Jessica, we all see stocks doing well. What about the average American?
Well, that depends on your finances. More consumers are struggling with more debt. They tend to be at the lower income levels. Here's the latest Capital One charge-off data.
This is debt that they assume won't get paid. It climbed to almost 6%. So we're now back to levels pre-COVID, and it's no wonder. If you look at what's happened to interest rates, March 2022, that was the first hike. So we were at 0 rates. And if you look at things like credit card rates between then and now, we're at 21%. They were at 16 then. The mortgage rate, 4% to 7%. And so it's no wonder we're starting to see stress.
CNBC's Sarah Eisen. There is more stress, but consumers are still spending. And it isn't just people who throw mindless purchases on credit cards. Many Americans have no emergency fund, and borrowing has to happen because of unexpected circumstances. On today's watch list, we got a lot of earnings. Olive Garden parent Darden Restaurants, RV maker Winnebago, FedEx, and Nike. We find out how many people applied for unemployment benefits last week and existing home sales numbers for February. Reddit issues stock to the public for the first time this morning. The NCAA men's basketball March Madness first round begins.
Indeed. CNBC's Jessica Ettinger, now 24 after. Indeed. CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. Gunman shoots Idaho corrections officers. That and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. Update now on that story involving 3 Idaho corrections officers shot as a gunman breaks an inmate out of a Boise hospital. Correspondent Julie Walker has details.
Police in Boise, Idaho say 3 corrections officers were shot as a suspect staged a brazen attack to break a prison inmate out of a Boise hospital overnight.
Suspect attacked and fired at the officers, striking 2 of them. Boise police officers responded to the hospital to reports of an active shooter.
2 of the officers were shot early Wednesday. The 3rd was shot and wounded when arriving police mistook the correctional officer for the suspect. Officers had taken Skylar Mead to St. Alphonsus Regional Medical Center for treatment. As they were preparing to return to the prison, an unknown suspect began shooting at officers, striking 2 of them. Mead and the suspected shooter have not been taken into custody. I'm Julie Walker.
Well, they're being called the Little Rascals, but this trio is not acting like the characters in the black and white movie bearing the same name. The FBI's Houston office says 3 boys ages 11, 12, and 16 are accused of robbing a Wells Fargo bank. Authorities say the boys entered the bank and handed a teller a threatening note. They were believed to be armed, although they did not present a weapon, and they got away with an undisclosed amount of cash. Parents of 2 of the boys identify them after their photos were released on social media, while a 3rd boy was recognized by police following a fight. The Little Rascals are charged with robbery by threat, a second-degree felony. America in the Morning for Thursday, March 21st, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
The Federal Reserve kept its rate the same on Wednesday, but still plans to cut their interest rate thrice this year. Hayat Panjwani, Washington.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaks with Republican senators in the U.S. I'm Clayton Neville.
President Biden visited Arizona to tout investment in computer chips. I'm Ed Donahue.
More members of the so-called Goon Squad learn their fate in Mississippi.
There are more questions than answers in the case of a missing college senior after a night out with friends. I'm Katie Clark.
Former Nickelodeon showrunner Dan Schneider responds to the docuseries Quiet on the Set. I'm Kevin Carr.
And the 11-foot-long, 750-pound pet. Back after these messages. Welcome back, and thanks for listening. You're with America in the Morning. Here's the update on a couple storm systems we're monitoring with AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
A developing storm will be shifting eastward through the southern plains today. This feature will produce a few showers and thunderstorms first thing this morning through portions of central Texas, and then continue to build and strengthen coverage through the midday into the afternoon. A few of the morning and midday storms may be strong to severe, containing heavy rain, gusty winds, and even some hail. Showers from this system will reach into parts of Kansas and Missouri as well. Farther north, a storm, often known as an Alberta Clipper, will quickly move eastward through the northern plains today and then continue through the Great Lakes tonight into tomorrow. Snow along the path of this area low pressure will spread from northeast Montana into North Dakota and northern South Dakota before moving into Minnesota late in the day and then quickly reach into most of Michigan by tomorrow morning. Snow amounts will be generally 1 to 3 inches in most places, but a heavier stripe of 3 inches or more will fall in parts of North Dakota into Michigan, and 6 inches or more will be possible in parts of southern Wisconsin. These two systems will eventually meet up this weekend for a monster storm in the east with heavy rain for most and heavy snow in New England. A third storm that brought colder air to the middle Atlantic and northeast will still provide some snow for portions of northern New England where a few inches can fall. Lake effect snow showers this morning through portions of Michigan and New York, but the rest of these will be dry with plenty of sunshine. It'll be chilly in the northern areas, but near or above the historical average in the southeast. In the west, there'll be a few showers in western Washington and Oregon, but otherwise it'll be largely dry through California into Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and New Mexico. However, another storm will be pushing on shore late tonight with more rain and mountain snow expected tomorrow into the weekend. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning. in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Wall Street surges to an end at the closing bell, setting an all-time record high for the three major indexes after the chairman of the Federal Reserve said it will hold interest rates for now, but could announce 3 rate cuts before the year is over. As correspondent Haya Penjwani reports, Jerome Powell added that inflation continues to cool.
Inflation stayed high at the start of the year, but the Federal Reserve says they expect to do fewer rate cuts in 2024.
My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. We are strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% objective.
But Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said in their meeting they decided not to make that cut yet.
The committee decided at today's meeting to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 5.25% to 5.5%, and to continue the process of significantly reducing our securities holdings. As labor market tightness has eased and progress on inflation has continued, the risks to achieving our employment and inflation goals are coming into better balance.
Rate cuts over time would lead to lower costs for home and auto loans, credit card borrowing, and business loans. However, if the Fed waits too long to cut rates, a long period of high borrowing costs could seriously weaken the economy and even tip it into a recession.
As I pointed out in my opening remarks, we did mark up our growth forecast, and so have many other forecasters. So the economy is performing well. And the inflation data came in a little bit higher as a separate matter, and I think that caused people to write up their inflation. But nonetheless, we continue to make good progress on bringing inflation down.
Haya Penjwani, Washington.
Israel's prime minister meets with Senate Republicans as war rages between Israel and Hamas in the Middle East. Correspondent Clayton Neville has details.
I believe a new election is the only way to allow for a healthy and open decision-making process about the future of Israel. At a time when so many Israelis have lost their confidence in the vision and direction of their government.
The meeting between Republican senators and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was a virtual meeting.
He made a presentation. We had questions and answers afterwards.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell told reporters that Netanyahu wasn't pleased with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer over his call for elections in Israel amid some pushback against Israel's relentless retaliation on Hamas in Gaza.
I made it clear to him that it's not the business of the United States to be giving a Democratic ally advice about when to have an election or what kind of military campaign they may be conducting.
McConnell said the politics of the war are becoming more evident on Capitol Hill.
But it seems to me the bipartisan support for Israel seems to be cracking on the political left in this country.
According to Senator Schumer, he declined a request by Netanyahu to speak with Senate Democrats separately. Schumer said he wasn't comfortable with what he called separate partisan meetings. I'm Clayton Neville.
President Joe Biden has announced one of the biggest federal investments in U.S. chip manufacturing, an $8.5 billion grant to tech giant Intel. As correspondent Ed Donahue reports, Biden went to Arizona, a key battleground state, as he struggles to get his infrastructure accomplishments to register with voters.
I'm thrilled to announce the latest public-private partnership and one of the largest investments in semiconductors in the United States ever. A new landmark agreement under the CHIPS and Science Act between my administration and Intel for up to $8.5 billion.
The agreement with Intel involves more than $8 billion in funding and $11 billion in loans for computer chip factories around the country.
When the pandemic shut down chips factories overseas, prices of everything went up. First time Americans began to realize just how important they were. Unlike my predecessor, I was determined to turn things around, to invest in America, in all American.
The plants would be in Arizona, Ohio, New Mexico, and Oregon.
This historic funding will use to build new semiconductor fab facilities and modernize and expand existing ones in Arizona, Ohio, New Mexico, and Oregon. Combined, it will create nearly 20,000 construction jobs, many of which will be union jobs.
The announcement comes during the heat of the 2024 presidential campaign,
including $30 billion in Arizona and $30 billion in Ohio. It's among the largest private sector investments ever in the history of Ohio and Arizona.
Arizona and Ohio are considered swing states. I'm Ed Donahue.
2 more former Mississippi sheriff's deputies who were members of a so-called goon squad have been sentenced for their part in torturing 2 black men. Details from correspondent Lisa Dwyer.
Christian Dedman has been sentenced to 40 years in federal prison. Prosecutors say that Dedman slapped the men with a sex toy and threatened to brutalize them with it. Hours before Dedman's sentencing, former officer 28-year-old Daniel Opdyke cried profusely as he spoke in court, saying that isolation behind bars has given him time to reflect on how he transformed into a monster that night. 2 other former deputies were sentenced Tuesday. 2 more officers of the self-described goon squad will learn their fates Thursday. All 6 white men pleaded guilty to federal charges in August, admitting that they subjected Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker to numerous acts of racist torture in January 2023 after a neighbor of the 2 black men complained that they were staying in a home with a white woman. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Not giving but loaning money to Ukraine. And Americans evacuated from Haiti. Those stories and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. I'm John Trout. The search for missing Missouri student Riley Strain has intensified, with police and volunteers retracing his steps in the Nashville area on land and water. Katie Clark has the latest.
A senior at the University of Missouri visiting Nashville having a night out with friends almost 2 weeks ago has not been seen since. When 22-year-old Riley Strain was out drinking with friends, he got kicked out of a bar after having 1 beer. Afterwards, he was caught on video stumbling around the streets and at one point hitting his head on a pole and bouncing into walls. A police officer's body cam showed him saying hi and seemingly not troubled. He was last seen that evening around the Cumberland River, where the search is narrowed. 2 women known on TikTok volunteering to search for Strain ended up finding his bank card near the riverbank. They discussed their search to WSMV TV Nashville.
There is so much trash down there, and it's so much to sit through. There are so many pieces of clothing, shoes, bottles, cans, everything. I don't really know how we found it. I would love to say just dumb luck, divine intervention. It was just sitting there.
Riley Strain's mom speaking on WSMV TV Nashville about his fraternity brother's reaction.
I mean, they're heartbroken also. He's their best friend. We love these boys like our own. It's just as hard on them as it is on us. He's my best friend. He's everything.
Volunteer search crews are increasing by the day. I'm Katie Clark.
As aid to Ukraine has stalled in the halls of Congress, interest is growing in the idea of delivering funds to the war-torn nation as a loan, a proposal first floated by former President Trump. As Charles de Ledesma reports, the Biden administration is working on getting Kyiv the weapons it desperately needs.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is vowing the U.S. will continue to support Ukraine's war effort against Russia, even as Congress remains stalled over funding to send additional weapons to the front.
The United States will not let Ukraine fail. This coalition will not let Ukraine fail, and the free world will not let Ukraine fail.
Austin and other defense leaders are meeting in Germany to discuss aid for Ukraine. The meeting comes a week after U.S. defense officials managed to find and use $300 million in contract savings to fund a new package of military aid for Ukraine, pulling weapons from Pentagon stocks. It was the first tranche of weapons sent since December, even as battlefield conditions in Ukraine have become increasingly dire. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
The first flights from Haiti, ordered by Governor Ron DeSantis to transport Floridians stranded on the island back to the Sunshine State, landed in Orlando last night. DeSantis said some of the people who asked to be rescued had gone to Haiti to help amid the breakdown of laws and vital services. DeSantis emphasized that Florida won't be flying anyone out that he says doesn't belong there. The ex-wife of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos continues to give away her fortune. Correspondent Jennifer King reports Mackenzie Scott has announced hundreds of new recipients in a philanthropic competition.
Author Mackenzie Scott says she's giving $640 million to 361 small nonprofits from over 6,000 that responded to an open call for applications. Scott came into a staggering fortune after divorcing Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and has given away over $17 billion since 2019. Lever for Change, which helped manage the competition, says the team decided to expand the pool and the award amount, with many of the community recipients receiving $2 million with no strings attached, except that it be used for tax-exempt purposes. Awards went to everything from the Baltimore Tree Trust to the California Native Vote Project. At the Minnesota-based nonprofit Gender Justice, which won lawsuits on access to emergency contraception, Director Megan Peterson says they'll use the funds to expand to North Dakota. In a brief note on her website, Yield Giving, Scott says the community groups are vital agents of change. I'm Jennifer King.
Drones can be a nuisance, but there's not much you can do about it. You could purchase a jammer, but they're illegal in the U.S. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech News.
The FCC is investigating Amazon and other retailers for alleged marketing and selling of unlawful electronic devices. Jonathan Urardi, Director of Strategic Communications at the FCC, said, "We've had several ongoing investigations into retailers, including Amazon, for potential violations of the FCC rules relating to the marketing and sale of equipment without proper FCC authorization." NBC News had earlier reported that the several online retailers and drone technology companies were marketing the sale of radio frequency jammers as drone deterrence or privacy tools, sidestepping federal laws that prohibit such devices from being offered for sale in this country. NBC also said they found 9 independent sellers on Amazon recently selling jammer devices that can be used to disable security cameras and block Wi-Fi networks. Leave a comment at allthetoptech.tech. I'm Chuck Palm.
America in the Morning's Robert Workman has sports.
NCAA basketball tournament, the last of the first 4 games in Dayton last night. Grambling erased a 14-point second-half deficit and topped Montana State in overtime for the school's first ever tournament win. Coach Dante Jackson.
What this mean for our program? It's an understatement, to be totally honest. I couldn't even tell you, man, to play in the NCAA tournament, get a first-round win, man, this is just amazing.
They meet Midwest top seed Purdue on Friday. Colorado got by Boise State. Neither team led by more than 7 points all night. The Buffs take on Florida in the South region tomorrow. Today, first-round play begins with 16 games, starting with Mississippi State and Michigan State in Charlotte at 12:15 Eastern Time. Go with MSU in that one. And concluding with Drake and Washington State tipping off in Omaha 10 hours later. NIT opening round last night. 3 of the 4 top seeds won. Indiana, Wake Forest, and Seton Hall, though the Pirates needed overtime to beat St. Joe's. Villanova lost to VCU. Second-round games in the NIT will be Saturday and Sunday. Baseball, the Dodgers scored 4 times in the 8th to down the Padres 5-2 in the MLB season opener in Seoul, South Korea. They're playing again this morning. Shohei Ohtani knocked in his first run as a Dodger. Later yesterday, Ohtani's interpreter was fired by the team after questions arose surrounding millions in wire transfers from Ohtani's bank account to a bookmaking operation. NBA, the Celtics held off the Bucks 122-119. Boston with its 7th straight win. Thunder got 35 from Chet Holmgren as they bopped the Jazz. Kings rolled over the Raptors. Toronto has dropped 8 straight. NHL, the Maple Leafs sapped the Capitals 7-3. Austin Matthews with a pair of goals to give him 57 on the year. Alex Ovechkin also scored twice. That gives him 845 for his career, 50 away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record. That's Thursday Sports.
Thank you, Robert. When we return on America in the Morning, one producer responds to the creepy allegations from what happened on the set of a kids' TV show. After these messages. We're back on America in the Morning. One of the former Nickelodeon lead producers responds to accusations from the docuseries Quiet on the Set. Kevin Carr has details.
In the wake of the docuseries Quiet on the Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV, former Nickelodeon series creator Dan Schneider released a 20-minute interview on his YouTube page. At the top of the interview, Schneider offered an apology.
Watching over the past 2 nights was very difficult.
me facing my past behaviors, some of which are embarrassing and that I regret. And I definitely owe some people a pretty strong apology.
The non-confrontational discussion touched upon many problems highlighted in the series, including jokes and situations that appeared to sexualize children. Schneider acknowledged some jokes might be problematic in retrospect, but insisted that was not his intent.
Every one of those jokes was written for a kid audience because kids thought they were funny.
Eventually, Schneider weighed in on the most shocking issue, the sexual assault of child actor Drake Bell on someone else's show.
I was more devastated by that than anything that ever happened to me in my career thus far. And I told him, I'm here for you.
Schneider offered suggestions on how to improve things in Hollywood, including censoring offensive jokes from future broadcasts, as well as preemptive hiring strategies.
When you're hiring young actors, minors, to work in television, I would suggest that we have a licensed therapist there to oversee that process.
All 4 episodes of Quiet on the Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV, is available on Max. I'm Kevin Carr.
He had the animal he called his pet with him for 30 years in a town in suburban Buffalo, even building the reptile its own swimming pool. Correspondent Julie Walker reports the owner wants New York authorities, who seized his 11-foot-long, 750-pound alligator named Albert, to give it back.
Environmental Conservation Police took the alligator from Tony Cavallero's upstate New York home, and he's heartbroken.
He's an emotional support animal to me. I am a mess because he's not here.
He says Albert is blind and has spine issues, but he's had him for 34 years since he was a baby born in captivity.
They're telling me he's in a better place. No, he'll never be in a better place than he was under my care.
Cavallero built Albert a pool, and as he grew, a separate room. He also raised the alligator with other pets, including a dog, but admits,
I did break the permit rule. I'm not supposed to let nobody touch him without taping his mouth. I apologize.
Now he's fighting to get Albert back. Julie Walker, New York.
America in the Morning for Thursday, March 21st, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.